Welcome to episode number 18 of the Eyes on Privacy podcast. This week we've got me and Josh
Good
Gillum.
evening.
So Keith is apparently on vacation and Mike is busy doing what Mike does. So it's just us two. I guess last week you had Keith and Josh, so I'm substituting for Keith from last week, I guess. But this week we're going to talk about something that's been in the news. Um, I mean, it made the news. I think the New York Times was the first to publish it. But the Russian hackers, or a security firm named called Holt Security, has, I guess, claimed that a Russian crime ring has amassed the largest known collection of stolen internet credentials, which includes 1.2 billion usernames and password combinations, and more than 500 million email addresses. And Hold Security, as I mentioned, discovered the information that was gathered from 420,000 websites. So this isn't a single breach like the Target breach or a one website. This is 420,000 websites that all got breached, and from the result of that, those websites came these 1.2 billion usernames and passwords, and we have no idea what sites are affected, because Hold Security will not release the names of the victims, and because they claim that they have non-disclosure agreements and their reluctance to name companies that might still be vulnerable. So we have no idea who got hit, and we have no idea. We can't tell if we have any of our usernames and passwords or email addresses on the list, from what I can tell. So there's a lot of question marks as far as that goes. But I thought, since it's pretty much in the news and everybody in the security realm has heard about it, I thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that that they were not releasing the data or not releasing who was hacked, and to find out if you were hacked was interesting because they flipped it. So if you want to know if you're hacked, they are making you pay their fee. I forget what they call their fee, but a fee to determine, for their cost of letting you know if you're the real individual of that website, and to then let you know if you're hacked, which is an odd way of going about it, or maybe a different way of going about it than what has been done in the past.
Well, I think this is a somewhat odd situation. A lot of the breaches I think that we hear about are single websites being hacked, and lots of millions and millions of usernames and passwords. Like, they hack their password database or whatever of one big website. But this isn't one big website. This is maybe a lot of small websites, or maybe a few big websites mixed in with a lot of small websites that I think we're vulnerable to maybe SQL injection or some other sort of attack that is fairly easy to exploit if you find it. And it's somewhat different from what we normally see. I think we have an article posted of basically security researchers are unsure really what to think about the whole thing, because they don't really have any access to the data to analyze it and figure out how bad it is. Is this really bad, or is it not so bad? They don't know. We have some information and we know some things, but we don't have the whole picture, because the security company behind it, Hold Security, is kind of keeping security researchers, the public, kind of in the dark about it unless you're willing to put up some money to them to kind of figure out, oh, am I hacked? So they're kind of using this as a selling. They're trying to sell their service to you by holding these. Oh well, 450,000 websites, 1.2 billion usernames and passwords. They are saying check your site for SQL injection attacks, but other than that, they're leaving everybody in the dark.
Yeah, so like, is it the sites like the site I created when I was 15 years old from Tripod or Lycos or whoever? Like, is that the accounts that they have that I don't remember the password to and don't really care if someone sees my site from when I was 15? Or is it, my bank account credentials?
Right, and that's the question, and that's what we don't know. Do we know if it says here, Hold Security acknowledged in its announcement that not all the credentials are valid or current, with some associated, and some are associated with fake email addresses, closed accounts, or passwords that are a decade old. So we're probably talking about, I don't know what percentage, a lot of sites that maybe you set up in your, maybe a student set up in his CS computer science class in college that, accepted usernames and passwords as kind of for a class, not really thinking about security, just more of as a demonstration that, oh, I know how to use databases and stuff like that, and that's not, that is, wow, that's technically a hack site. It may have a few usernames and passwords in it. Those are not valid credentials that would be available. But we don't know. We don't know the information, and I find it. I'm not sure if Hold Security is doing things for the greater good or doing them to profit, and I'm leaning toward they want to profit from this more than they want to actually help the everybody out and be good security people.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of times people, when they discover these type of hacks, or that they use this as a marketing tool to sell their business in general, but they do it in a way where it's like, hey, here's all these hacks, let's help everyone fix these, for free, as more or less a marketing tool, and then go back later and try to, drum up some business. And here it's like, oh, you want to know if you're hacked or not? We're going to drum up the business now. So almost cutting to the chase, and like you said, really not helping the greater good of the security world on the short term.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, we've talked about LastPass a lot before, but in a lot of cases, with a lot of the breaches that we've seen, and even the Heartbleed issue that we saw, LastPass will create a tool specifically for finding out if you are affected by it, or if the sites that you're going to are affected by it, or if your usernames and passwords were in the file or whatever. Because since you are storing your usernames and passwords with LastPass, they can kind of look to see if your credentials were on a list. But since we don't have the list, and we don't have a list of websites, LastPass can't do this for you. They do have a blog post on their site talking about this, and this has been called CyberVor, which vor means, I guess, thief in Russian. So cyber thief is kind of the name that they're kind of using for this, and they basically mention that they don't have the details and what websites were affected or anything like that, but to be vigilant, essentially. And they give the common advice that we've given many times, which is use a password manager. In the case of LastPass, you can run the security check on it, which will find any weak or duplicate passwords, and don't use the same password on multiple sites. And in the case of LastPass, you can turn on multi-factor authentication. So even if somebody does get your LastPass password, they won't be able to use it to log into LastPass without that second factor. And I think multi-factor is good in any case when it's available, but in a lot of cases it's not available, except on the big sites. I don't think many of the small sites that even they all think. I think a lot of the small sites think we're not a big target, so we're not going to be hacked. And I think this proves them wrong. If you are a small site, you can be hacked. If with people go out, they use spidering tools to just look for websites, and they run vulnerabilities against them. That's what happens. It's happened before, and it'll continue to happen as these vulnerabilities continue to be out there. This will keep happening. I think the difference is these criminals harvested all the information and put it in a giant database. I mean, that's the big difference.
Yeah, and when you think at 420,000 websites, I would almost want to think that these weren't like very intensive hacks, that they were probably easy, didn't require a lot of mental effort to think about how to get through a bunch of security checks, that these are just probably very blanketly open and, probably just easy to, SQL injection, and was able to get the data real quick and not have to actually try to elevate their privileges or gain access through multiple layers to get to the data.
Yeah, if I were to guess, this was complete. If I were to guess, it was for the most part completely automated, and it was just I create a script, I make it go, and I end up with a database of 1.2 billion passwords. I mean, that's my guess on what exactly. I'm guessing an individual did not go out to 420,000 sites and run an attack. I mean, there's tools out there for doing that right now that can be used by good guys, but they can also be used by bad guys. I mean, there's plenty of security tools for testing your site to see if it's vulnerable, and they can easily be used by bad guys to test your site to see if it's vulnerable, and if it is, then steal information from it.
Yeah, so I guess going back to your theory, or not your theory, but your statement of how to protect yourself, and it's for this, some of the sites you're not going to be able to protect yourself from other than having a long password that's not the same as other websites. So that way, if they do compromise that, but you can't protect yourself from the server side, it's at least a password that's not going to get you in, or not going to get them into your other more critical sites.
Right, and there's I've seen, yeah, we advise not duplicating passwords anywhere, but even if you are going to duplicate passwords, it's probably, which I don't advise, but in one password. If you're gonna before I was using LastPass, I had one I used about. If it was compromised, it got compromised. Whatever, I didn't care. It was more or less a throwaway password. And then I had one for sites I kind of cared about, and then there were the sites that I really, really cared about, like PayPal, for example, and things like that, where if it was compromised, people could actually steal my money and stuff like that. So that's what I used to do, but now I use a password manager. So I don't even I have to remember a really, really strong password. I have multi-factor authentication enabled, and it stores all my passwords.
Yeah, with the LastPass type thing, like having 20 to 25 character passwords for all these sites, even for sites I don't even care about if they get compromised or not, it's just fantastic. It's just click a button, get the randomized password for 20, 25 characters. I never even know what it is, don't really care what it is. And I just, move on my day without having to remember 5 billion passwords.
Yeah, and it has so many extensions for various things that you'd want to use it on that it's almost seamless to use. I mean, there's a few sites that have issues with it, but for the most part, it works really well. So
Yeah, man, I use Firefox, Chrome, my Android-based cell phone. You log in from multiple locations. I can log in, with a plugin to my work machine. I can log in from home if I have the full install or just another plugin on the browser.
right, and it can and LastPass can do other things too, other than just store passwords.
Yeah.
It's not just a password storage thing either. You can put secure notes in it. You can fill out forms. You can even store your credit cards in it if you want to for filling out purchases. And I do that because it's convenient.
Yeah, I've yet to do that, but
I mean, I
I
store
guess
my passwords in it. I store my PayPal password in it. So if somebody
what's
got
the
my
difference?
PayPal password, then they could just pretty much
Go
empty
there
my
and get
bank
usage.
account.
Yeah.
They could empty my bank account if they wanted to. So I'd say that is more. I'm more vulnerable. I lose more money that way than I would if somebody was able to get my credit card number.
Yeah, that's true. And then the liability of your credit card, information is going to be more reimbursed to you by your credit card agency than the bank account, or easier or
Yeah.
faster.
But anyway, back to the password breach. I think this is something. Again, we don't know the overall impact, but I opened up the calculator and did the division, and based on the 420,000 sites and the 1.2 billion passwords, that's over 2,000 username and password combinations per site. So it's entirely possible that there's some biggies in there.
Yeah,
It's definitely possible that there's some big sites that are involved with over 2,000 usernames and passwords per site. Um,
yeah, because I definitely feel there has to be some 15 to 45 user, websites on there, and then you back that from the 20,000 and add it to the other way. You're looking at definitely some at least decent sized sites, but probably some big ones.
yeah, I mean, that's the average, and I'm guessing that there were probably some pretty small ones that had maybe, a few hundred, maybe even just in the tens, 10 to 20. And if that's true, if there's a lot of those, then there might be some that have had 100,000, maybe even 1 million passwords. So, but we don't know. That's that's the problem. We don't know. We're guessing, and that's all we can do unless the security company decides to release more information.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be hopefully maybe once they realize that most people probably won't pay, at least pay to them, but you never know.
yeah, I mean, we can go into an ethical discussion on it, and I think I would lean toward it's somewhat unethical to profit versus help the community um, type scenario, but they're trying to justify it. So, but I don't think we've quite got their comments on it. So maybe they're just holding off for a little while. Maybe behind the scenes they're contacting the big sites and telling them, hey, you're vulnerable, patch, and and you need to disclose. We'll let you disclose it yourself instead of having us disclose it. That might be what's going on because they did cite non-disclosure agreements, so they may have actually talked to the sites that were big sites that were affected, and they may let them disclose it and not have them disclose it, and that's possible.
Yeah, and I think that Hold Security, from the one article, I think it said that they've been in business for less than a year, but have not confirmed that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've never heard of them, but then again, there's so many security companies out there that it's hard to you know, the security companies just keep cropping up here and there and everywhere, and it's just hard to keep track of them all.
Yeah. Let's see what they're.
But anyway, do we have anything else that we want to talk about as far as this article goes?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. Don't use your same passwords all the time. Consider changing them once in a while.
And yeah, yep. And don't be visiting sites that you don't. I would say don't be visiting sites you don't trust as well. But I'm not sure if that has to do with this vulnerability. But maybe avoid creating accounts on sites as well if you can. So
Or if you did, just have a throwaway password.
yeah. And be careful about. I'd say one more thing is be careful about giving out your email address, because your email address is actually worth something, especially your main email address that you check. So creating, the Gmail accounts are free. You can create it. You can create more than one Gmail account if you want to. So if the same as passwords, as I was talking about, I had 3 different passwords for 3 different tiers of sites. You can have 3 different email addresses for 3 different tiers of sites as well. Ones you trust, ones you kind of trust, and ones you don't trust at all. And if it starts getting spam, you can just say, I don't want this account anymore. I'll create a new one.
Yeah, that's a good idea or a good suggestion.
So anyway, we'll wrap it up. I think we've talked enough about this, and we'll post some articles so anybody interested can read more about it. And we may post something on the eyesonprivacy.com website if we get any new information, or if maybe there's a site that you can go to check to see if you are on this list. But anyway, thanks to Josh Gillum. I'm Preston Wiley, and keep your eyes on privacy.